So I've had these magnets here in the shop for about 5 days now, and I use these. I've used these previously on a Halloween project, but I got a larger pack of these. I have a bunch left over, and for the last couple days I've been trying to think of projects that I could use these with. So I have one idea in particular today that I'd like to try, and that's what I'm going to bring you along for today. So the idea that I kind of have in my head is making some sort of chisel holder. Now, the reason I thought of this was because I had a few chisels here on the bench. So I had a couple of these magnets in my hand while I was doing the other project, and I threw these onto the bench, and they obviously stuck onto the chisel because the chisel was sitting on the bench like this. I tossed them and they stuck on, and I had this light bulb go off in my head, and I'm like, oh, I could do. Oh. So as you can see, these magnets are pretty fun to play with. So this project isn't going to be anything too fancy because this is for the shop and it's for me. The only person that I have to please is myself, and for that reason I'm going to simply be using a piece of scrap lumber that I have. This is just some Douglas fir, and what I'll do is I'll cut a section out of this, and that is what we're going to make this out of. So normally when I'm using a set of chisels or any tools, I keep them here in the tool well. And when I'm working, a lot of times this thing gets filled up with sawdust or planer shavings or chisel cuts and all that stuff. So whenever I'm working in here, I always feel like I should put the chisel back because that keeps me neat, that keeps it clean, and keeps the tools off the workbench. But with this thing that I'm going to make today, I think this will kind of solve that problem, because then instead of putting it back in here and trying to fiddle around with this case, I can then simply put it on a board and know that all of the chisels are going to be in the same spot and they're not going to go anywhere. So I have 4 main chisels that I like to work with, and I have a other larger set here that has some of the oddball sizes, but I don't use these as often. So what I'll do is I'll kind of space the 4 chisels here. So something kind of like that. Those are spaced pretty far apart, but I have big hands, and the last thing I want to do is have to come up like this and grab a chisel. I'd rather come in with my hand and wait for the cars. So I'd rather have my whole hand be able to wrap around the chisel instead of trying to finagle like this and just grab it by the end. So when I'm working, I can come in like this, grab the chisel, and not worry about it. So somewhere kind of in there. So now I'm trying to think of some way that I could spruce this up a little bit to make it look a little more fancy, instead of it just being a plain old board. What is it, my water ball? Fine. Don't you love it when people interrupt your video? I just had to do it. Okay, so what I came up with, and I just thought of this like 30 seconds ago, was actually having the chisels at an angle, because my workbench here, I have the vise here, and I'm almost always working at this angle like this, and instead of having the chisels straight on like this, what's wrong with turning them to the side, you know? What's wrong with that? So if I do something kind of like this, right? And I think this will be better because, say I'm working like over here, I can just come over like this and grab any size chisel that I want. And design-wise, what I came up with was something where I kind of chamfer the edges or the corners a little bit, like this. And also, I'd like to round over these two longer edges. I don't think I've cut a compound or angled cut on this miter saw in a few months. See, I always have this clamp sitting here, and if I turn the saw, it gets in the way. There. So now I'd like to bevel a little bit these edges here, these two longer edges. And for this, I'm going to first go with the hand plane. I think that'll be the best way to do this. And I'll do that, and then I'll go over it with some rough sandpaper, and then do a finer grit sandpaper after that. Whoa. And try to make it as round as possible. You want to get rid of all of the facets if you can, but if you don't, there's no worries because you can just do this with sandpaper and that will make it nice and round. And I'm just rounding over a couple of the other corners just a little bit. Whew. Here's kind of a before and after of the sanding on the edges. So I've been here at the drill press for about 5 minutes and I've been really trying to dial in the depth of the drill. The bit that I have in here is a 1/2 inch, and what I did was I just took a scrap piece of wood, I took a magnet, put the magnet in the hole, and that gave me the right depth, and it only took me 2 tries. By the second one it was nice and flush. This is the depth that I'm going to go for the cuts. They're not cuts, but this is the depth that I'm going to cut the. This is the depth that I'm going to drill all of the holes. Got it. Alright, so now we can do some finish sanding and then put the magnets in. Bam! Okay, so now we can put in the magnets, and all I have is some adhesive, Scotch adhesive, I don't know. I ran out of super glue, so this is what I'm going to use. Whew. Chemicals. Don't you ever wish you had 3 hands? Kind of thinking that right now. Oh, what the heck? Ah. Hi.
Howdy. What's going on?
Huh?
I said, what's going on?
Making a video.
What are you making?
Like a chisel holder thing. Like magnetic. There. I think that is good. I will have to clean up a little bit of some of these, there you are, some of these glue spots here where it kind of dripped out, but that looks kind of cool. So I let this glue sit for a little bit, and now what I'll do is clean up some of these glue marks that unfortunately got on to the wood. So, and some oiled linseed oil, and then we can test it out. These clips that I'm showing you like this, where I'm not cutting anything out, this is kind of what my my day is like. Some of these videos, or actually most of these videos that I've done, I try to hide that stuff and edit that out, but you know what? I think it's good to show some of those things, not too much like this, but you know, it keeps it real. Alright, now we can test this sucker out. Sucker? Alright. Whatever. So you're working, you say, alright, now I need to use my chisels. You grab this thing, put it at the edge. I think this is where I'm going to keep it, over here on the edge of the workbench, because I don't use this side a whole lot. Mostly I'm here, and then I keep all my crap on this side. So this part doesn't really get touched because I'm always afraid something is going to get knocked off when I'm like going like this or something. So that's kind of my methodology with that. So have your board here like this. Bam. Put your chisel on. Bam. Just like that. And I actually realized you can put screwdrivers on there. You could put a file on if you wanted to. I mean, even stuff like this, if you wanted to, could put that on there. Probably not very safe, but could do that. Could put scissors on there. For me personally, this is what I'm going to be using for the chisels, because I use those pretty often. So that's what I'm going to use this for. But I might even make another one. But I'll have to try it out for a little bit and see how it works. That is going to be it for this one. And I will see you in the next video.